recognize ma'am. By, present siya. O, sige ma'am, you are now recognized, please.
Honorable Chair, distinguished members of Congress, ladies and gentlemen, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Correct ko lang po yung sa designation, tapos na po yung term ko as Associate Dean. I am a Professor of Journalism at the UP College of Mass Communication. I am also a co-founder of Check.ph, isa pong collaborative coalition ng mga fact-checkers dito sa Pilipinas, where we strive to cite or help the public distinguish disinformation narratives. If you allow me, I have slides po for the presentation, if it can be flashed.
Sige, go ahead, ma'am.
Kailangan ko po yung slides kasi yun yung visual, yung unang visual po na
Yeah,
na-impact
technical,
natin.
please. Ayan na, ma'am.
Ayan, salamat. Next slide, please. It's very important for us to be able to distinguish ang usapan or the certain beliefs na within society. Ang malinformation naman po ay sadyang nananakit po ng tao. It usually attacks reputations through disinformation, no? So, nakikita na, for example, ang deepfake ay example po ng isang malinformation dahil you are already impersonating a real person and putting words in that person's mouth. So, ito po, we have to distinguish the intent, no, in tackling the area of information disorder. Next slide, please. So I thought I would just summarize what I have to say in ABCD. Ang abakada po ng disinformation. Ang una po ay manipulative actors. They are people with clear groups, institutions with clear intention to disrupt democratic process or the information ecosystem. The second is deceptive behaviors, mga tactic po. And I'll go through it given the limited time one by one. Can we have the next slide? So I'll tackle it more systematically. So una po, manipulative actors. So as Jonathan had said earlier, no, dun sa nakasite po sa kanyang study Architects of Network Disinformation, ito po ay mga institutions, mga tao, mga groups na nananadyang nagkakalat ng disinformation. I listed here some examples of these manipulative actors, such as yung tinatawag ni or na-label ni Craig Silverman, isang journalist who focuses on disinformation also in the US, na mga black PR agencies. These are boutique PR agencies that really focus on, sometimes they operate during elections to either attack or to attack certain individuals during the election period or feed disinformation in other forms like in environment issues, no, health issues, mga ganyan. So sadya silang nagta-target ng audiences. Many of them are not necessarily members or officially recognized public relation firms in the country, but are also ad hoc. And then po yung mga POGO na or community-based fake account operators. No, so ang danger po ng isa pang danger ng POGO ay they have the machinery and the equipment to operate not just online gaming, but they can easily convert to scamming and other forms of harmful activity. And then of course, apart from them, you also have community-based fake account operators. Ito yung mga grupong na-hire, usually kasama rin sila ng mga black PR na siniset up para mag-attack ng or magkalat ng disinformation. Then of course, you have the hired trolls, yung mga tao nila, hired influencers. Now this can be individuals who are selling their platform, no, to the highest bidder, no, to be able to share whatever information their financier wants to give out. No, whether it's just for propaganda sake or it's disinformation. And then of course, yung grassroots supporters, ito po yung hindi ito bayad, ito yung mga na-involve lang sa disinformation dahil masyado silang, for example, loyal sa isang personality. No? So, kung kahit anong sabihin nitong influencer na to, i-echo nila. Sort of like blind loyalty. So, many of them are victims also of disinformation. Unfortunately, kahit na biktima sila rin yung nagpapakalat ng maling impormasyon. All right, so the commonality here is that they are not operating in and for themselves, but are guns for hire, where the weapon is disinformation and the aim is the manipulation of the public sphere. Sometimes po we can, next slide please, there is some times when it's state-sponsored disinformation. As we can see here, I have two studies from that were published by the Deutsche Welles about Russian disinformation targeting Germany, and published also by the BBC News of Chinese-led state propaganda and disinformation. Next po, letter B, deceptive behavior. I'm narrowing this down to what I think is the most threatening. First is the inauthentic coordinated behavior. Ito po, as Jonathan had also mentioned earlier, pwede po nating hanapan ng paraan para mabawasan to at to go after those who actually finance this. This is the multiple digital actors working together to create false impressions of popularity, consensus, and authenticity. Minsan po, sa isang opisina lang, kunyari, marami silang hawak na cellphone, marami silang hawak na mga mobile numbers, pero sa isang tao or isang grupo lang nanggagaling, making it appear that something is popular or viral. Clickbait rin, ginagamit ito as a tool, whether as a meme, thumbnail, to attract unsuspecting viewers. And astroturfing, it's a creation of or an illusion of grassroots support when it's really just bots and also influence peddlers. As we said earlier, next slide, deepfakes falls under the deceptive behaviors we find in the internet today. Marami po nang nabiktima ng mga celebrity tsaka mga news personalities. Mahanap nyo sa web na kunyari nagbebenta ng mga health products pero hindi naman totoo. Si Presidente po ay nabiktima rin ito, yung if you recall the issue on, may sinabi daw siya sa West Philippine Sea na hindi naman totoo. Then harmful content, C, next slide please. So there are several types of harmful content. I just have enumerations of 8 here. False medical information, incitement to violence, no, ito yung hate speech, encourages and glorifies violence, including suicides, defamation, election interference, financial fraud, imposter content. Yung imposter content, yung nag-hack into legitimate websites and creating a clone website. So, akala ng mga viewers, pinupuntahan nila yung, kunyari, pinupuntahan nila yung Inquirer, yung pala ay clone site siya ng mga disinformers. And then, public safety risks also, yung mga fake emergencies, or yung mga fake na humihingi ng tulong dahil sa isang typhoon or whatever, pero wala pa naman sila doon or hindi naman sila talaga apektado. So next slide, some examples of harmful medical content that can be found on the web. Depot distribution, next slide. Disinformation distribution networks. Like we said, the thing about social media, it operates on algorithms. So, nag-create itong mga algorithm na to. Next slide, please. Nag-create itong mga algorithms na to ng mga echo chambers. So, lalo ng kung panay disinformation yung laman ng social media mo, then it's likely na yun lang yung nakikita mo at yun rin yung nasa spread mo sa internet. Automated bots also are there to boost algorithm para sila yung nagva-viral at sila yung nag-a-appear sa ating mga social media feeds. And then of course, yung mga paid influencers, because of the number of their subscribers or their viewership, they can easily affect the algorithms in favor of whatever they're posting. And then of course, yung mga fake accounts, ito yung mga either inauthentic accounts or secondary accounts of mga clone accounts of real people. So some policy, next slide please. I'd like to echo what Jonathan said earlier, but I also have a few of my own here, in my policy analysis and recommendations. So first, there's a need to balancing the need to combat fake news with protecting fundamental rights is a complex challenge that requires extensive evaluation and flexibility in adjustment. So hindi ho ito black and white na issue. Kailangan po the bottom line is still the protection of our freedom of expression, freedom of the press, especially the right of the people to information. Current laws in the ASEAN, such as the Malaysia's Anti-Fake News Act of 2018 and Singapore's Protection from Online Falsehoods and Manipulation Act, or PORMA, while sounding positive in combating disinformation, is more of an obstruction of civil liberties and media freedom. Kung titignan natin po itong dalawang sample na laws na to, malabo po, very ambiguous po yung definition nila ng disinformation. So kahit ano pwede mo siya ipasok. Kahit na legitimate reporting po ng news, especially on areas of corruption or public complaint of, let's say, services not rendered by public utilities, etc., pwede pong masakop dito. So, it's really against freedom of expression. Pero merong silang, well, in terms of PORMA, I will mention a few that provisions that they're kinda okay. But first, emphasis on media and information literacy by involving various stakeholders, including governments, technology companies, civil society organizations, and the academe in developing and implementing strategies to educate the public. Yung current nating MIL courses sa grades 11 and 12, they are only 1 quarter. So it's not enough considering that it's now as important as reading and writing and arithmetic, no? Yung 3 R's, kasama na dapat po ang media literacy, which means that it's hindi lang po sa grades 11 and 12, dapat po bumaba ito ng grade 1 pa lang, ay tinuturuan na natin ng mga bata maging media literate. Penalizing masterminds, no? Especially black PR firms engaged in disinformation. Yung mga influence operators po na sinasabi, there has to be a way to penalize the masterminds rather than yung individual trolls. Kasi wala ho tayong mararating kung maghahabol tayo ng individuals rather than yung naghara sa kanila or yung nagbabayad sa kanila. Some solutions in other countries, next slide please. Sa Finland, they have implemented a comprehensive media literacy program in schools and the general population, leading to higher levels of public awareness and resilience against disinformation. Sa Taiwan, they have adopted a rapid response mechanism to counter disinformation involving fact-checking organizations, government agencies, and social media platforms. This approach has been effective in addressing false information quickly. At sana ho ito ma-replicate natin dito. Kaya nating i-replicate to if there is collaboration among and support with fact-checking organizations, especially now that Meta has removed their partnership with third-party fact-checkers. Yung sa Singapore PORMA law, they also have applied various contexts of quickly addressing and correcting false information. So, meron silang executive rapid response where they publish the correction together with the false information para makita kagad ng public kung ano yung mali at ano yung tamang information. So, ito po yung mga aking masasuggest at this time. Thank you po.
Thank you so much, Ma'am. Rachel Ican. So, dito na tayo kay Attorney Michael T. Chu, UP College of Law, and then after which we will be proceeding to the government agencies. Attorney Michael Chu, you are now recognized by Zoom?
Yes.
By Zoom. Sige.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Your Honors. I will share a presentation as well. Hopefully, it is visible. And I want to acknowledge also that my presentation draws on the work of Dr. Ong because he has done a lot of work in studying this information in our context and reiterating as well that there are differences among disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation, as Dr. Khan had mentioned. But I want to highlight in disinformation, for example, from a legal perspective, there should be a justification for the regulation or whatever law that may be passed that targets disinformation. And it's not insurmountable. There are ways to do that. I think that the first thing that I would say is that human rights experts in the UN system or the special procedures, for example, will say that we do not punish disinformation per se, but we focus on the agenda and also the intent, which is what distinguishes disinformation from the others, which the intent to propagate false information for a particular agenda. And I say that because that has to be squared with our constitutional framework on freedom of expression and how expression can be regulated. I want to also reiterate the context that is important here, Your Honors, because while we do take guidance or we compare our approach to the approaches of other states, it is important to recognize that those states may not have as robust free expression environment as we do, or have different histories or experiences. For example, if we look to the laws of Germany restricting hate speech, you will understand why their approach on hate speech is that way, a little bit stricter than most because of their experiences with World War II and the atrocities that followed, versus the experiences of the United States, for example, which really is inclined to protect free expression in the widest breadth possible. And on that note, a lot of our doctrine and laws in the Philippines hew towards the U.S. approach, not entirely, but closer to that than, let's say, Germany's approach. In the same way that Canada's approach is different from ours because they have specific values, constitutional values that they want to promote, let's say, the protection of democratic society, which is something that we share with them, but that's part of their legal tests, actually. Okay. So just to reiterate some of the ways in which this information is propagated online, and again, I defer to the other experts on this, but these are the ways, and I think we see them being conducted, being done in platforms and elsewhere in the internet. Social engineering, for example, will employ methods that that recreate or that truncates or changes the context, or context is missing, and of course that also transforms particular content through the use of technology. Okay, And these are some of the models. Dr. Ong's work generated some of the models, and I'll defer to him regarding that. I also just want to emphasize that companies should be able to see, social media companies, for example, should be able to see disinformation networks because these accounts are interconnected. See, so often because of analytics and the technology that they use, they will be able to spot patterns in their platforms, and that should be visible to them. And especially when these disinformation networks cross platforms. So, for example, in the case of Meta, where you have Facebook and Instagram, they can cross platforms, and therefore it should also be visible to those companies, given that they also use algorithms and artificial intelligence to spot those. Okay, so again, your honors have already stated the effect of this information on our institutions. I will not reiterate that, just to also say that it also has an effect on the population and could be counterproductive to all the other education measures that we have been doing, which means more education than is called for. Okay. So these are some of the strategies that have been offered, and we'll discuss them briefly in a little bit in the context of how other countries approach it. My contribution to the discussion would be to echo that, of course, expression and content are protected under the Constitution, save under exceptions. And this was why I emphasized earlier that disinformation per se should need to be carefully reckoned with, because it's such of a breadth that some protected expression or a lot of protected expression might be covered by a law on disinformation. So, but there are ways, again, to deal with that from the legal standpoint, in addition to the policy recommendations. So we have fact-checking, of course, platforms do that, although as discussed by Dr. Canmet, had taken a different path here. Media literacy. So some studies, especially, let's say this case study from West African countries, tell us that when students are taught media literacy and critical thinking skills, they are able to better combat this information, because the end user or those who are targeted with this information are able to discern the type of information that they are receiving. And so, again, to the point that was asked in the invitation to talk about education, education is really an important part of it, but really tailored education and also in the formative stages, because, and also the universities will be very important, because critical thinking is also developed at that level, a deeper critical thinking. So, and then some of these also suggested by our experts. Now, I want to turn to the approaches of the countries, our neighbors, and those who are elsewhere. Singapore, as mentioned, has a law that focuses on online falsehoods that can harm public interest. And some of the remedies in this law will be correction orders. So I think you scale it. And international law also requires us to be proportionate in our response. So if the response to the type of harm can be remedied by a correction order, you don't need to remove it. A takedown order if it's of a graver nature, and then account restrictions would be imposed on such grave offense. So there are penalties involved there. Vietnam also has a decree on this, and it targets interstate service providers, internet service providers as well, and social media platforms, and one of the remedies is removal of content that they define as illegal. Mexico's government has a fact-checking site, so this is also an important countermeasure used broadly, so that there is a government source that counter-checks whatever information, false information is out there. And Finland, as was mentioned, also have national media education policies and new literacies program. This ties neatly into the whole of society or nation approach that was mentioned earlier, because this cannot be addressed by one single law only and penal law only. It also has to be proactive in preventing future susceptibility to this information. Nigeria has a private effort called Africa Check, Canada has anti-online disinformation that has tools relating to different types of specific areas where disinformation happens. And the Netherlands also has a program like Canada and Finland, and they assign this to various ministries. Australia uses a task force to monitor this information. And again, the importance of a media literacy campaign that is meaningful and not just, something that you post online and you leave that there. So it has to involve stakeholders like our educational institutions. France has law on election misinformation, so it's very specific and defines particular terms, which we'll turn to earlier. One of the more significant regulations will come from the European Union through the Digital Services Act. Here, the focus would be on platforms, large platforms. I think the threshold is 45 million users or subscribers, and there are certain obligations that are imposed on those platforms for them to be able to operate in the European Union. And just to recall as well that the European Union is an economic union for the most part, and so that's the target. But it also protects EU citizens from harm. So they are obliged to do risk assessments, those companies, to report those risk assessments and to be audited by an independent third party. So, and then if not, then there will be consequences. There will also be penalties there. Germany has a law, as I mentioned earlier, but the context is different. So this is a summary of those. To turn to our approach, and I will go quickly because, of course, as members of the House of Representatives, you are very much aware of these. But we have unprotected speech in our constitutional framework that is already existing. So as mentioned earlier, libel and defamation. So some of the ills or the problems that had been mentioned earlier might already be covered by unprotected speech. So these things, of course, Congress can legislate on, can amend the laws that we already have based as well on case law that the Supreme Court had released interpreting some of these provisions. So these would be helpful guideposts in what is unprotected or protected. The rest that are not covered by those would be protected. And so if Congress, the House of Representatives, decides to pass a law that restricts expression that is not covered by those which are already unprotected, then that law must be analyzed or must be crafted with foresight in mind that challenges to the law that restricts expression might have to contend with these particular tests. And I will not discuss all of them, but the most relevant for us, the Brandenburg test, which is recently reiterated by the court in the anti-terrorism law case, might not be as relevant here because that speaks of incitement. But what is relevant here might be the clear and present danger test. So here, as we can see how the test is formulated, Congress has the right to legislate on an evil that the government has a right to prevent. So that can be very broad. But that legislation can only pass muster, constitutional muster, if, again, the danger is clear and it is present. So my point there is for the legislation to be very, very clear in its policy declaration and in the provisions with respect to the danger that is being addressed and the imminence of that danger. It cannot be something that is hypothetical. And so those are some of the tests that we have, Your Honors, and I'll be open to questions on them later because in the interest of time. But one of the international laws that also govern state conduct is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Here it allows laws that might have an impact on speech as long as it satisfies three tests. The first one is legality. So that means that the law's definition have to be very clear so that the citizen, who in this case we may have an issue of trolls or influencers that will bear the impact, know exactly what conduct to avoid. And that shouldn't also lead to chilling effect. And then the legitimate aim is covered because public order is one of the legitimate aims, as well as respect for the rights and reputations of others, and necessity and proportionality. So the fines should not be too exorbitant, or imprisonment should not be too exorbitant that it's no longer proportionate to what was, let's say, it's misinformation or malinformation as opposed to disinformation. Meta strategy was also discussed earlier. So just breezing through, maybe I'll end here with the final points on what the U.S. had done. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission Act declares that unlawful, unfair, or deceptive acts or practices that includes influencers. And part of the practice guidance here is for disclosures from influencers. I think we've also heard about this case about the TikTok ban in the U.S., and that's coming from a law that protects U.S. citizens from foreign adversary-controlled applications. So this requires divestment, if you want to continue operating in the country, divestment of the foreign adversaries' stake in the corporation or in the application. And that is narrow here because they define who exactly is a foreign adversary. So they identify particular countries. In the case of TikTok, they identified China. And so these are some of the proposals that were mentioned earlier. I will no longer repeat them, but I am open to questions of your honors later. I think the final point is that artificial intelligence might be leveraged for this, but it's a double-edged sword because artificial intelligence had also been used in that disinformation strategy. Thank you very much, your honors.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll be allowing the members to ask questions. Konti na naman po itong magpe-present. We'll be proceeding to the government agencies. Unahin po natin si Secretary Ivan. Thank you for being here on our invitation. You have a presentation, sir? Set? Okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. The presentation will be presented by our Cybersecurity Undersecretary, Jeff D.
Okay, you said, Jeff, you are now recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to our Secretary of ICT, Secretary Ivan Janway. The presentation po is just an overview of...
You said, can you kindly speak louder, yung mic? The reason why we invited the government agencies is to find out if they are compliant with the Republic Act 10175, especially on the implementation of the Cybercrime Investigation Coordinating Center. Kung ito po ay nagpa-function para to abate this problem of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And siguro with your presentation, makaklaro sa ating mga kababayan kung ano na yung estado at kinalalagyan ng ating gobyerno on abating this problem. Thank you, Yusek and Secretary. You can proceed with your presentation.
So Mr. Chair, so there will be two presentations. One presentation from the DICT USEC for cyber, and then the next presentation will be from CICC on specifically what your point of inquiry.
Yes, so bali, sa ano muna, on the point of the department.
Yes,
And then afterwards, yung sa CICC,
CICC.
which was created under Republic Act 10175. They have presented to that as well already. But nakita namin na very informative at siguro kailangan malaman po ito ng taong bayan. So sige, Yusek Jeffrey, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Secretary. So, yung presentation lang po, if we can flash it on the screen. This presentation also went through the CICC, the Cybercrime Investigation Coordinating Council Executive Committee, which convened last week. Next slide, please. Just an overview, the Philippines is ranked number 2.
Quiet, please. Okay, go ahead.
Just an overview of the Philippine social media landscape. The Philippines is ranked number 2 in social media usage with approximately 86.75 million social media users. That constitutes about 73.4% of the entire population. We average daily 3 hours and 34 minutes of screen time in social media. And the most popular app still remains to be Facebook and Facebook Messenger. A very far second is TikTok, although Instagram and X, which was formerly Twitter, is more famous dun sa younger audiences. Let me point out lang, Your Honors, that most people maintain multiple social media accounts. So the statistics might be a little skewed in favor of Facebook because some who also use other social media platforms have their own Facebook accounts. Next slide, please. So, with regard to misinformation and concerns, according to a survey by the World Economic Forum and some other, and the United Nations, 43.9% of Filipino social media users follow particular influencers, and 63.8% of users signified concerns about what is real or fake on the internet. 70% of Filipinos on social media also bought a product due to an advertisement by an influencer's recommendation. We're generally talking about influencers not necessarily as artists, but also yung mga sikat po na mga vloggers at saka yung mga sikat pong nagbebenta sa TikTok at saka sa Facebook Marketplace. Next slide, please. We would like to present two cases just to express challenges of the law enforcement agencies when it comes to enforcing the law, specifically on misinformation, on disinformation, malinformation, etc. No? We would like to present the case of the Pulburon, which is where napatunayan na naman po, nagkaroon na po ng forensics ang NBI, ang PNP, the DICT already spoke on it, CICC, the center also spoke, Verifiles, and the other private parties already said with finality that that was a deepfake. The deepfake was first presented in a rally in the United States. Seemingly, a face of the president was swapped to a person inhaling a white substance in that particular video. Next slide. So in this particular incident, sinabi na po, like I mentioned earlier, maliwanag po na this is a deepfake which was intended to malign the president and the current leadership. It is a manipulated video featuring the president. And we already issued, all government agencies were one in issuing a clarification that this was false and this was deepfake. I will discuss more about that, sir, but I would like to highlight a second case. Yung second case naman po, next slide, bago ko po i-discuss yung two cases. This one is, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, for presenting this, but this is already in social media po in TikTok. A particular person under the handle of AMP Satire had been producing deepfakes, but this time it is different. This time inaamin po niya na deepfake yung pinoproduce niya at meron po siyang kolatilya na sinasabi niya yung kaniyang pinipresent is for political satire. Sinasabi niya na these are all satirical and these are all political opinions. So yung isa po, hindi niya inamin, sinasabi, yung baliktad po, yung Pulburon case, sinasabi nila na totoo yun. Ito naman pong si AMP Satire, almost every day nagpo-produce sa TikTok, sinasabi niya this is satire and that this is for fun. Yun nga lang po, obviously, ang tinatarget po niya, nandiyan po si number 1 in our constitutional hierarchy, the president, and then followed by the number 4 in our constitutional hierarchy, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and some other personalities involved. Next slide.
So mga targets yan, talagang they are being hired to malign the persons of those political personalities.
To be honest, Mr. Chair, we do not have specific information yet, but we are willing to share results of investigation of our efforts to track down the entire machinery being used, which is on the next slide, Mr. Chair.
All right, sige, go ahead.
Wala lang, Mr. Chair.
Nag-react kasi nakita ko yung picture ko eh. So, kaya I reacted.
My apologies, Mr. Chair.
Sige, pero kung meron na kayong makukuhang
Yes,
mga sources dyan, maganda for us. Sige, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chair, first I would like to seek the apology of the committee because no charges until now have been filed with case to the Pulburon, pero meron kaming map out of the personalities that engage in kung sino yung anchor. Ang tawag namin doon anchor eh. Yung parang source, tapos ini-spread nila systematically using a case of hashtags.
So you you have the information about that?
But we would like to request sana, sir, kasi wala pa namang official case na we are ready to present this sana in executive session to Congressman. Your
Oh,
Honor.
surely we have to have an executive session on that matter. This entails national security. Okay, Congressman Barbers.
Mr. Chairman, just clarification kay Yusek Jeff. No? Ang ibig mong sabihin, identified nyo kung saan nag-originate yung video.
Sir, yung originate, hindi po, how would I say it? May suspect po kami sino yung anchor, kung saan sinishare. Similar to the academic discussions earlier made by the academe, usually meron siyang anchor, and then po pwedeng because naniniwala ka lang, hindi ka naman paid, pero kung papaano dinidisseminate. So meron po siyang
Wait, with the indulgence of Congressman Ace Barbers, kasi itong information na to, very critical as well. Kasi sa atin, okay lang yung personal natin eh. Yung personal natin, we can talk about it eh. But if this video pertaining to, halimbawa, yung sa West Philippine Sea, tapos sasabihin natin yung source na yun, ma-identify natin, it might jeopardize yung operation ng DICT. So I believe that we need to have a executive session on this matter because I know what you're driving at, Chairman, but kasi kung sa atin lang, sige, okay na yan, pero makikita yung intention eh. So wag. I believe that we have to have an executive session.
I absolutely agree with you, Mr. Chair, but my question directed to the Yusek Jeff is, alam nila kung, kaya nga kinaklarify ko, sabi nyo, yung anchor ba, yung origin? Hindi.
not necessarily so, Your Honor.
So, but when you say anchor,
The source of the shares.
siya yung responsible in sharing.
That's correct.
And you have a person in mind. You have a suspect.
We have a series of people who could be the anchors because sila sa kanila yung, kumbaga pag in ABC po, sila yung root, sila yung main
And if
propagators.
evidence warrants, magpa-file kayo ng kaso.
If the case,
May we know ano yung kaso ang ipa-file nyo?
sir, that's, if meron nga po kaming question, if we will present that po, Your Honor, because we're
Okay,
discussing
thank
that.
you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Yusek.
Okay, Yusek, you can proceed with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, to the next slide po. So, here are the open debates that we are having in which we would like to share to the public and also to the esteemed TRICOM so that para makita po kung gaano ka-complex yung issue ng misinformation and disinformation. If we focus on the Polveron case, the questions in mind that we are discussing among the executive committee of the CICC, which includes the NBI, the PNP-ACG, and the DOJ, is that will this fall under the sedition, revised penal code article 139, or a rebellious act or sedition? Because the element must be that the offender rises publicly and tumultuously, among other things. Ito naman po kasi openly pinananawagan nila na BBM resign. Mamaya po ipapakita rin namin yung pag nakita niyo po kasi yung hashtags, ang ginamit nila is hashtag Polvoron, hashtag BBM resign. And then they used hashtag PNP, hashtag AFP. Parang it seems that they are fooling the public that the AFP, our armed elements, our legitimate armed forces, are part of this particular call. So may mga ganun po kasing ginamit sila.
Pero
to
Yusek, yung hashtag is like, para lang inform kayo of this content eh, right?
Yes, sir, but it's also being used as a metric for virality among social media
To make it
planners.
viral.
To make it viral, yes, sir.
But they're not part of that.
No, yes, sir.
Sige, okay.
Next slide, please. So, now, in this particular case study, again, let me emphasize two things which our esteemed colleagues from the academy have already presented. The case of the Polvoron is very, very clear mal-information. Kiniklaim nila totoo ito. So, it is a national security concern. In the case of AMP Satire, it was self-identified, pero tinatago pa rin po niya yung kanyang yung kanyang true identity. So, mga questions namin ngayon, does it fall under sedition law? Can sedition case be filed in the case of Polvoron case? Pero ito po yung number 3 bullet point po ang actually mas mahirap. Usually, information being requested on the actual people behind handles, like in the case of AMP Satire or in the case of other, kasi hindi po totoong identity minsan yung pinapost nila sa Facebook, nahihirapan po kaming mag-acquire. Kasi we need to issue a cyber warrant, and I think the law enforcement agencies would be more would be more authoritative to enlighten that matter. Pero usually po kasi for the case of cyber libel, pag magpa-file po ng MLAT, which is Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, sasabihin ng US, for example, but libel is not a criminal offense in our jurisdiction. Ergo, wala, you cannot compel us to produce that information. Just to give you an example, Your Honor. So, next slide.
Dahil sa kanila, sa states, it's civil.
Civil case po ang libel.
And it was committed in the United
In
States.
the United States, yes.
And that's the reason why it's hard for us to...
One of the reasons why we're having some
Yeah,
difficulties.
correct. But talking about you were talking about the subpoena power.
Yes, sir.
Papunta po kayo doon?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Yes, sir. Sa PINAPAL. So here, I would like to gusto lang po namin ipakita sa public and sa members ng Congress kung ano po yung similar laws, pero on a more practical note. Kanina kasi diniscuss ng academy yung ibang laws, but more on a on more academic note. Ito practical lang po. How do other countries treat cyber warrants? Sa atin po kasi pareho tayo ng US, which is the first row, mag-a-apply ka sa court. But there are some other countries na ina-allow nila, for example, yung prosecution or competent police authorities to issue a limited power to subpoena information. And that's where we're coming from. For example, Russia has that. Singapore has a limited power on that. And also the United Kingdom. Next slide po. Now, in terms of retention, nagiging problema rin po kasi from a law enforcement perspective yung retention. Sometimes, magpa-file ng kaso 8 months down the road kasi doon lang naging available yung warrants and yung information that we need. Pero burado na. I understand that the social media networks, I hope nga they are here, sa kanilang servers which is located elsewhere in the world but not in the Philippines, I'm sure they have that data. Because they also have data retention policies with other countries. But in the country po kasi, we follow some similar to the United States again and Singapore and Russia na magre-retain lang sila ng information upon the request of law enforcement agencies. Unlike other countries like the United Kingdom, Australia, na meron talaga silang data retention policies even for social media. So, next slide po. And so here is a summary of the issues and of what we are requesting just in case. Something to think about po dun sa House bill that was proposed for social media regulation. And this is what the DICT has been referring to as social media regulation. Hindi naman namin sinasabi na kokontrol din natin social media, but just to allow the law enforcement agencies to have more immediate power to react. Kasi ngayon po, nasa 3-second rule na po ang social media. 3 seconds scroll ka po eh. Tapos, in a day, viral na siya, but our courts will take months before they can issue the warrant. By that time, tapos na yung viral, ibang issue na po yung viral. So, for example, we have a challenge in obtaining information and evidence. Sinabi ko na po yung sa jurisdictional issue. If the crime or the alleged crime was committed outside of the Philippines and they don't treat it as a crime, we have a difficulty obtaining information. Now, on the third bullet point po on takedown requests and parameters and content removal, we take note, which was also discussed by the academe, the Decini case versus the Secretary of Justice in questioning the constitutionality of 10175. We understand that if the law is too superfluous or ambiguous, they strike it down as unconstitutional. But let me point out also, Mr. Chair, that in the OSAIC law, it was allowed na may auto takedown kapag ka child pornography. So I think if we craft a law that will allow a auto takedown but with specific parameters so as not to curtail freedom of expression in the interest of national security, then we can then I think that could be allowed, no? So an answer to the Dicini versus Secretary of Justice when they question the
You're talking about the
R81.
automatic takedown on the part of
Opo.
the platforms.
Yes po. Actually, yung ano po kasi 10175, if I remember, the original provision was Section 5, grants the power to the Secretary of Justice to issue a takedown order on any website or platform if there is evidence that there was a criminal intent doon po sa post. Yun po yung na-strike down ng Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court.
Section 12 ba? Section. I'm sorry, I'm not sure about the section, sir, but there is a section there. NTC was telling me section 19 now, sir. So yun yung next strike down, but I think, as I mentioned, yung sa OSAIC law kasi inallow ng Supreme Court, basta child pornography. So with the proper parameters,
And that's the reason why we invited also the platforms. Unfortunately, sa ating briefing, andun yung TikTok, yung ByteDance, but now they are not here. So we will be inviting them over again. And we will be also observing the proper procedure on how to tackle those invitees who are not present on today's hearing. So Google, ByteDance, Meta, and I think YouTube. So later on, I'll be asking the members also to have a motion. Sige, go ahead, proceed please.
and Mr. Chair and esteemed members of the TRICOM, we also propose that there be a data retention policy where the law enforcement can ask for data just in case a case is to be filed in the future date. So, yun po kasi isa sa mga nagiging problems natin. In the case of Polvoron, na-take down na nga yata yung mga posts.
So ang ibig sabihin po, Yusek, you're talking about the retention of the post on the social platform.
Opo.
Kasi once
Opo.
na take down nila yon, ang court will not appreciate the filing of the case
That is
without
correct.
the content being in the page.
That is correct. Kasi ang lalabas po, questionin na, sabihin, screenshot lang naman yung ebidensya mo, or video yan from another video. You took a video of a video in a past social media platform. So medyo nagkakaroon po ng differences or difficulties.
Kaya
in
ako
appreciation.
nagulat din ako kasi may mga text sa akin, yung mga nag-post na tinitira tayo, tapos suddenly, wala na, deleted na. So meaning kasi na nagkakaroon na sila ng siguro natatakot din po sila because of the action being taken by this Congress. And we need to tell our people that the government is doing their job. Fortunately, the privilege speeches, ikaw lang pala, dalawang speeches yan, di ba? Two privilege speeches that was delivered by Congressman Barbers, and the resolution will do justice not only to the members of this house and the executive department, the ordinary people, the showbiz industry, and others as well. Siguro talagang kailangan gawin po ng CICC, Cybercrime Investigation Coordinating Center, yung trabaho. Kasi ang worry ko po dyan yung sa subpoena power. Like for example, yung how can you subpoena those who have violated yung mga offensive contents?
Sir, thank you for that question, Mr. Chair. So, in our presentation, we did mention that walang subpoena powers ang CICC, wala rin ang PNP-ACG. Ang nagsasubpoena po, NBI, but actually, wala rin yatang force of... Pero, walang contempt powers ang NBI, sir.
We have discussed that yesterday in the briefing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yung CICC, walang subpoena power. Yung CICC that was created under 10175.
Correct.
It is just a coordinating center.
Correct.
But the CIDG or the PNP, which is part of the coordinating center, and the NBI have a subpoena power.
Wala rin po. Di ba iwan? Sir,
CIDG? Andiyan si General Torre ata, andyan?
Sir, umalis na po, sir.
Umalis na si General Torre. So, di ba ang CIDG you have a subpoena power?
Yes, sir, we have, but it is exclusively for cases handled by CIDG.
Cases exclusively handled.
Yes, sir, handled by CIDG.
What do you mean by exclusively handled?
If this case were investigated and subsequently filed by CIDG, then we can issue subpoena.
No. Being a part of the coordinating center, being a part of the cybercrime investigation coordinating center, that will be exclusively a part of the PNP because you are a member of the coordinating center, and that's the reason why you were put in the 101-75. Precisely, you have the power to subpoena those people. Kaya it is the responsibility of the CIDG having a subpoena power to issue it to those who have violated the illegal content. Di ba?
Yes, actually, sir,
Even
it
the
is the chief,
NBI.
yes, sir, it is the chief PNP who has the subpoena power, sir.
Huh? No, the CIDG have the subpoena power. That is vested on your directorate. Di ba? O kaya nga kayo criminal investigation detective. Sayang wala si Chairman ako, baka na-sermonan ka.
No, sir. The chief PNP, sir, is the member, sir, of the CICC. And he has also subpoena power, sir.
Yes, I know that. But the problem is in the creation of the CICC, siyempre, this is being headed by the ICT. Di ba? And then, ang vice chairperson is the NBI. Member ang chief PNP. Well, kung titingnan mo yung caliber of leveling of the positions, medyo nasa member lang si chief PNP. And that's the reason why we are asking the CIDG to fill in the gaps na kayo pumasok. Hindi mo ipasok si chief PNP dun sa pagiging member ng CICC. Hindi a-attend yan.
Yes, sir. If it involves investigation conducted by the CICC and the CIDG is part of this investigation, then we can issue
You will be
subpoena,
a part of the
Yes.
investigation. Why? Because you are a member of the coordinating center. Kaya nga coordinating center, and the reason why we have a hearing like this, because we wanted to put that CICC as a agency in the amendment that we will be filing. Kailangan na tayo magkaroon ng sariling agency. Hindi lamang po siya coordinating center. We will have a power of an agency to issue subpoena as well. So for the meantime, that we don't have like that agency as just yet, I think the CIDG and the NBI should be coordinating talaga doon sa CICC para may ngipin po talaga tayo. I think yun na naging Yusek Jeff, yun na naging balakid po ninyo. Am I correct?
Well, hindi naman siguro balakid, sir, kasi palagi naman kami nag-uusap. Marami rin namang nahuli na si Yusek Ramos, but nag-focus lang, sir, in the past scams. So, mga IMSI catchers, scammers. So, you're right, sir. We borrow the powers. So, we coordinate with the law enforcement agency. Sorry for the quote, but seemingly to borrow their powers so that they can, similar to how the PAOK operates po, no? So, kasama ang PNP, kasama
Kasi most especially now that nakita po naman natin that there are issues in the West Philippine Sea. Yung have you seen the post of ni Army Chief natin na nasisira yung kanilang fight sa West Philippine Sea because of the fake that's national security. Di ba? And if I may read, may read, basahin ko lang po. Ito po sinabi ni Commodore J. Tariela, yung Philippine Coast Guard po natin, spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, on the role of social media influencers in the discourse surrounding the West Philippine Sea. February 3, 2025. Ngayon lang to. Sabi niya, I would like to commend the House of Representatives for leading this initiative by inviting social media personalities who sometimes model the conversation regarding our fight in the West Philippine Sea. At times, some of them even amplify PRC narratives and weaken our own position. It is important that we make these influencers recognize the limitation of their freedom of speech, particularly when it jeopardizes our national interest and undermines our own struggle in the West Philippine Sea. Kasi sila nakakawawa yung ating mga members of the Philippine Coast Guard eh. Diba? Talagang kailangan ng yung exercise of that subpoena power must be enshrined on the CICC.
Mr. Chair,
Chairman Labate, please.
With